So good afternoon and welcome to another of VMA Group's webinars. Team's called coming in right on cue. Just decline that. My name's Matt and I head up the contract team here at VMA Group. We've hosted monthly webinars throughout the year discussing key communications topics with guest speakers in their respective fields. I'm typically just the warm-up act, introducing the business and then passing over to the headline act to run through their key content. Being rather frustrated with being the bridesmaid and never the bride, or the best man and never the groom, in this case, I thought I'd take centre stage and book myself to be the headline act. So thank you to everyone joining me today for the interim and contract update. You may have noticed I've just booked a shorter session of just 30 minutes. Partly, I wasn't sure how much interest I would get in the session, but more importantly, because this is just going to be a quick overview rather than an in-depth analysis. Just give people the opportunity to ask me anything about the world of communications recruitment, ideally with a contract focus, of course. I do have plenty of time, so if you do overrun, I'm more than happy to stay on longer. The main bulk of the session will be covering the contract and interim section of the recently published Inside Insight report. That is available to download on our website, of course, but I thought I'd just give it a little bit more insight to the Inside Insight. However many times can I say the word insight? Before I discuss general market overview, give some tips and advice on securing a new role, standing out from the competition, and what is, of course, as we know, a very challenging market at the moment. I'll also share some information about the jobs that we've worked on, sectors that we're supporting at the moment, and building that interim network, a little bit about IR35 as well, if we've got time. As I say, good to make this as interactive session as possible, so do ask your questions either throughout the presentation or afterwards as well. So let me dive into the Inside Insight report. Bear with me, I'll just share my screen. Hopefully it works okay, I haven't done this before. Alrighty. So hopefully that's all okay. And now I can't see a Q&A or the chat box. So I think I'm just going to rattle through this presentation and then I'll check out the Q&A and chat box afterwards and I can answer the questions afterwards. So just recap for anyone that isn't aware, very quickly, we are VMA Group is a corporate communications and marketing recruitment company coming up to our 50th year actually in business, and mainly we do cover the UK and European markets, so that we do place globally. Last year we placed in Toronto and Dubai and various other countries, but the main bulk is the UK and Europe. Before I go into the contract section, I just wanted to give a bit of a demographic overview of the report and demographic of the internal communications professional. Of the 550 plus responses, I think it was actually closer to 600. The main bulk, so around 2/3, no surprises, were between the ages of 30 and 50, and 3/4 are female. Hasn't changed a huge amount actually since our previous reports. You'll see that more often than not, communications roles, whether that be internal or external, do have more of a female-heavy comms team. Top 5 industries, again, banking, professional services. Typically, that makes up around 25% of the market. This year, 28%. Biggest newcomer was transport. That hasn't normally been in the top 5. We've recruited for quite a few roles in transportation, railway in particular, maybe on the back of challenging time in that sector with strike action and things like that. And the top 6 areas that IC professionals have previously worked in. Lots of crossover between wider corporate comms, external comms. Lots of people start their career maybe agency side or in a corporate comms role and then look to focus on internal comms. I was a bit surprised by the change one there, second, 48%. I see a lot of internal communications professionals start to develop their career and move into change communications and then pick up change management qualifications and then move into be change managers. I don't personally see many go the other way around, actually, change managers into internal comms, but there we are. That's the report that does not lie. And then events, PR, and marketing all around similar, around 40% experience. Internal comms people have that experience prior to going into internal comms. So as I say, interim and contract. Go straight into the rates. We're looking at around 3/4 of internal and change communications professionals do charge a rate of over £500 a day. Healthy rates, and mainly because the contract market, whether that's communications or any other discipline within business, you would expect them to be more experienced professionals that can go in, the cliche of hit the ground running and go in and solve a problem or work on a project. We don't often see many kind of exec level roles or junior positions on a contract basis, although of course that can happen. This is just a little added golden nugget for those of you on the call today. Just something I created, which isn't in the report, but it just gives an idea of what you should expect to charge or expect to pay if you're hiring, from executive through to director, and then you have the kind of autonomous kind of consultant or lead, that infamous vague title there. Just a broad range. These are outside IR35 rates. You'll notice there's some overlap. For example, the top end of the executive going up to 350, bottom end of the manager at 300. That's, for example, if you've got an executive in a professional services firm, or a manager maybe in a charity that doesn't actually manage any reports, just job title. That's where the overlap comes in. But anyway, that's kind of broad overview of what you can expect to earn as a contractor. I've put an asterisk there on the lead title. I don't often see internal and change communications professionals earn any more than that £1,200, although we did have a few respondents up to sort of £15,000 and £2,000 a day, believe it or not. I think that maybe those that are potentially freelancing, the odd sort of day here and there, I don't know if they'd be earning £2,000 a day consistently over a 2, 3, 4, 5 year period. Maybe. Or it may be that they work for a consultancy and that's the rate that they've been charged out at. But yeah, I did put that asterisk because people do earn more, of course. But that's what you can expect. Quite a nice takeout from this slide. So how long have you been contracting for? So around a third of survey respondents in the contracting field have been contracting for less than a year. I think that figure was around 17 or 18% in our last survey back in 2019. So it just shows that lots of people maybe are choosing contracting as a career choice, a way of working, mainly due to the flexibility that it can offer, as I'll talk about in a later slide. You've also got 25% of contractors have been working over 10 years, so 10 to 20 or 20 years plus. So again, those that go into contracting, lots of them really enjoy that work-life balance, they like the day rates, and do tend to stay at it as a way of life for their longer-term career. The next two slides I've just added in here to show that contracting maybe isn't as insecure or unstable as some may think. So what is the average length of your interim contract? So you've got 38% there, 10 to 12 months. If you're looking at 38, 15, 14, that's around 77, give or take, percent. Around 3/4 of people have contracts over 10 months in duration. So it's not a short-term thing more often than not. And the next slide shows that over 3/4 of contracts are extended. So again, you may secure a permanent role 6 months down the line. It could happen that there's a redundancy process, whereas lots of contracts can go 10, 12, 24 months and even be extended. So yeah, it's not so insecure as some people may think. Question here, how did you secure your current contract? Now this is quite different. If this question had been how did you secure your permanent role, which again is in the report, it's different kind of percentage responses in each of the different areas there. Recruitment agency and existing network are really key when searching for contracts, partly because not all of the contracts are advertised. The vast majority are, but due to the quick nature of the search, lots of clients, lots of recruitment companies will go through their network. They'll go through, trusted practitioners that they're aware of because they need to basically turn a shortlist around in a few hours or that day. By the time they've advertised the role and shortlisted, longlisted, it does take some time to do those kind of pre-screening that you would expect maybe from a permanent search. So it's not to say that we don't advertise our roles, because we most certainly do, but the networks are really key. That's the point I wanted to make on this slide. Does your current or previous interim contract deliver on focusing change? That hasn't changed a huge amount from our last report, but around 4 or 5 contractors are working on change program as opposed to business as usual. Just again to emphasize the importance of knowledge and expertise in the change field rather than just pure internal communications. If you are an internal communicator and you want to go into contracting, if you don't have change experience, it's likely you may secure more of a BAU cover role, mat cover, that kind of thing. And it's likely that role will be more on a fixed term contract as opposed to a day rate. There's quite a lot going on here in this slide, but bear with me. So the last reports, I said 2019 earlier actually, but 2017 and 2018 were the last full internal communications reports that we ran. And we asked the question, should be titled actually, we asked, that's my fault there, of what was the change focused on when you're on the change program? Is it focused on IT? Is it an SAP? Is it an ERP, S4HANA? Is it a HR people change, merger and acquisition, brand? So in 2017, the top ones there were IT and joint with HR and people, and now in 2023 or 2024, HR and people are nearly 1 in every 2 change program focus. So lots of times I meet people who are very comfortable and really enjoy working on the IT change programs, but also it's not always the case. More often than not, people prefer working on the cultural changes, HR side of things, whatever that may be. You know, future ways of working, vision and values, new HR systems, whatever it is. But anyway, I wanted to emphasise that HR and people is a key area of the market at the moment. Now, what is your preferred way of working if you're a contractor? Is it for a limited company, umbrella company, or is it on a fixed term contract? So this is pretty stark, big changes since 2017 on the back of the IR35 reforms. When I first started in a VMA Group in 2016, every contractor that we placed pretty much worked for a limited company, and that was just how things were done. And then the IR35 regulations changed. The onus was on the end client to make that determination rather than the contractor. Again, I can answer questions on this later or separately, rather than going into too much detail on IR35. But what it has done is it's led to fewer people working through limited companies, fewer people maybe being aware of the benefits that a limited company can bring, and people being more comfortable working in a PAYE scenario, whether that be umbrella company or, as the data shows, fixed term contracts. Fixed term contracts back in the day weren't as desirable for people. They didn't have maybe that security that a permanent role would bring, and they didn't have the high day rates that you'd get from working for a limited company. However, people are preferring that to working for an umbrella company lots of the time, because they still do get at least company benefits that you don't get with an umbrella company. You get statutory benefits in an umbrella company. Happy to answer questions on all of that, but that is just a big kind of cultural shift in how contractors operate. Again, quite a lot going on in this slide, but what do you love the most about being an interim professional? You'll see that in 2017, the number one reason was clear deliverables and end date, with the work-life balance and flexibility being down in third place. That's gradually increased. It's now right at the top of the list there. So that work-life balance and flexibility. We saw from a flexible working survey that we ran in, I think it was 2022, maybe 2023, that contractors do typically receive more flexible working with regards to work from home than permanent employees. Lots of times it's maybe because they're working in program environments, maybe global project team, where their colleagues on that program are dispersed all over the world. So there's not a huge amount of need for them to go into the office, so that they tend to work from home and they get that work-life balance. It's a bit of a common myth that people go into contracting purely for the financial reward. That's generally lower down the kind of rankings. Because it's, brutally honest, it's not always as financially lucrative than a permanent role would be. You do have void periods between contracts where you're not earning anything. In challenging markets, that's more so than others. During COVID, nowadays, for example, that people are finding themselves out of work for a little bit longer than maybe they'd be used to. But they're also, obviously, of course, not getting their pension contributions, not bonus scheme, share options and things like that. I'm already selling it right now, but they also, when they are in a role, they can earn high day rates. So swings and roundabouts on that one. And that's the end of my presentation. There we are. Let's say quick run through, 15 minutes. I will stop sharing my screen and jump back onto the webinar. And happy to answer any questions anyone may have on any of that. Got a few things in the chat. Let's have a look. And yeah, we've added the link to download the copy, of course. You're more welcome to do that. Interesting change in the focus of IC since 2017, notably the reduction in M&A activity is the HR people category in isolation rather than being a core pillar of wider change programs. So that's a fair point with regards to the M&A activity. We have worked on some quite high profile M&A roles, and one of the M&A webinars was focused on M&A. It's quite a really interesting one back in January, February. So check out our YouTube to take a look at that. We've worked on the Allen and Overy, Shimon merger, obviously the OneWeb. I can't remember they were merged with. Anyway, the OneWeb merger, and Viasat and Inmarsat. So there's still M&A activity around Redrow Barrett developments, for example, but maybe not so much as back in 2017. Is the HR people category in isolation rather than being a core pillar of wider change programs? Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes we may just work on, for example, actually post-acquisition comms role I've worked on recently is very much HR focused. We needed someone that's pretty much a HR change comms practitioner to go in and work with the HR leaders to roll out whether it's new vision values on the back of the integration and HR policies for the new joiners after they've been two paid over. Whereas other times it may be, as I say, new HR platform, they're rolling out a new workday, which could be, technology linked to HR. So it's a bit of both. But lots of times when we're taking briefs, clients will look for people that have had significant experience working with HR functions and very well versed with HR teams. Question here from Nicola. Are you currently recruiting for any interim contracts at VMA Group? Now, that's a good question, Nicola. The answer to that, unfortunately, is that all of the contracts we're currently working on are fixed term. My colleague Ben has just placed a contract this week. So he's placed a role, 6-month contract with university. And we do have lots of contractors out working, but we have seen quite a shift that, and when Nicola mentions interim, I always see interim as being a day rate. So we are working on contract roles, but they're fixed term contracts, salaried positions with the end client. So unfortunately, interim roles are a little bit harder to come by nowadays. Market conditions and everything, and the roles that we're working on are fixed term contract. But yes, we are working on fixed term contract opportunities. A question here from Sarah. Matt, what are you hearing from hiring firms about the choice and range of candidates they are seeing for their roles? Do they rate the quality of candidates they see? So good question, Sarah. I think that there's a few points here. So one is that there is a big range of candidates that they're seeing for their roles, but it's not necessarily the range of candidates that they're looking for. And I was going to talk about that a little bit later after the presentation. I've just got some more things to cover. So to give some context on that one, I advertised 3 jobs recently: an exec role, a manager role, and a senior manager. It's a lead role, but for argument's sake, senior manager. The executive role, I had around 350 applications. The manager role, I had around I think it was around 240, and the lead role, I had around 180. So there's a huge amount of candidates in the market at the moment. Like I say, it's a challenging market. There's been cuts, redundancies, and for whatever reason, there's lots of candidates in the market. But I get a sense that there's lots of the candidates are, and I can see why. If I was in the market, I'd probably be doing the same. Applying for roles which mass applying. You may be a Marcom specialist and applying for an internal comms role. When I have a response of 250 responses for an internal comms manager role, it may only be 10 or 15% of those who've actually worked in internal comms, believe it or not. And there'd be lots of people that have worked in external comms or marketing that would, and quite rightly could do the internal comms role. They'd need a little bit of they'd need to pick things up and learn from the head of internal comms, what have you. But at the moment, it's very much client driven, business driven. The clients can be quite fussy, can be quite choosy, and they're not really in a position where they need to hire somebody that doesn't have the exact experience they're looking for. So they can be quite selective. So I can touch on it a bit later, but we'll cut that and bring it now. One of my pieces of advice is to really go for quality rather than quantity on the applications. Really focus on the roles which are a real good match, rather than okay, well, I've touched a bit on that, a few years ago, or I probably could do that. I would really focus on quality, not quantity, and go for those ones which are really key to your experience. Another piece of my advice, is we're on that bit now on the advice part, is to try and find out, if you're applying for a role, the key contacts, whether that be talent acquisition manager, whether that be a recruiter, either in-house or the externally is managing the role, and send them a one-liner, not War and Peace, because they probably won't have time with their 350 applications, 250 applications, but just a quick one-liner. Say, look, hi Matt, it's Sarah. Just want to say, I've just dropped you a quick line that I have applied for this role. I'd love to hear more about it. I think I matched the brief very well for these reasons. Bish bash bosh. It'd be great to hear from you when you get a moment. And the reason I say that is because lots of times people do follow up with me when they apply for a role, and more often than not, it's the ones that have got the relevant experience and are more suited to the role that do follow up because they're really passionate and really they know that that the role is suitable for them, as opposed to the people that just hit quick apply. Okay, so I'm not sure if I should crack on with these questions or if I go, let's do the questions because I'm out of questions. So, where are we? Alison, I haven't contacted since IR35 came in. Can you summarize the difference between inside and outside IR35 roles? Really good question, Alison. So the difference between inside and outside IR35 roles. So I guess you have a difference with regards to working as a contractor. If you're working, I'm just trying to think of how much detail I want to go into because I'm conscious of time, but we're going to run over the 1 o'clock. So how much detail on IR35? If you're working outside IR35, you're going to be working for a limited company and you're going to be paying taxes though you're a company rather than an employee. So it does work out very tax efficient. The take-home pay is considerably more than if you're working inside IR35. If you're working inside IR35, you may be working either a PAYE arrangement, whether that's for an umbrella company or whether that's direct with via a recruitment company or the end client, but it's going to be PAYE. You're still earning a day rate, but you're not taking home as much. The reason being you're paying taxes though you're an employee. You're paying employee taxes as well as also employers NI 13.8%, apprenticeship levy 0.5%, for example, and all these costs start to add up. So the key difference is that you'll be taking home if you're working inside IR35 circa 20% less. But can you summarize the difference between inside and outside IR35 roles? So that's the key difference with regards to how that will impact you as a contractor. The key difference as well with regards to the role itself, typically if an end client is willing to do the carry out an IR35 assessment, which they all should, but lots of them don't, the key difference with an outside IR35 role is that they will be engaging with a genuine contractor as opposed to a disguised employee. So the role itself will be a role which is very niche. No one in the central comms team or within the business is able to perform that role, and they are engaging with specialist resource, specialist talent, and that's why that talent, that contractor is able to charge more money and work for a limited company. There are certain things that contractor should be able to do in order to be deemed outside I-35. I can send through, we've got some documentation as to what that is, but there's 3 or 4 main criteria. Are they able to provide a substitute, for example? Are they able to, is the obligation to continue working after the end date? Are they able to determine their own working practices? So did they use their own equipment? Do they determine the hours? Is there a notice period within the contract? All these kind of things. The more things that within that contract that makes it look like an employment contract with a standard employee, the more likely it is to fall inside IR35 because then you'd be seen as a disguised employee. Bit of waffle there, but hopefully that made sense. Happy to pick up after, just conscious of time and not going into too much detail. Helen has asked a question. As you said, it's more common at the moment to have gaps between roles. Any guidance on how to cover this off on CV? It's typically been a big no-no. So yeah, that's a good question because it is very common at the moment for people to be out of work for a little bit longer because of market conditions. Honesty is always the best policy in my opinion, and definitely in VMA Group there's nothing. I've once placed someone, believe it or not, who hadn't worked for 6 years. She moved out of the country, support family, came back to the UK. I thought she had absolutely brilliant experience, put her forward, and she ended up getting the job. I think that a lot of it is just around being honest, transparent. Is it because you taking a bit of time off between contracts? Is it because the market's challenging? Those questions will come up from employers, particularly if it's been years. But I think that nowadays employers are quite understanding. They are fully aware of the market conditions, and although the question may come up, I think it would be very harsh, and I wouldn't maybe want to work for an employer who's going to be so strict on that, that if you've had 5 or 6 months out between contracts, they wouldn't consider you for a job. So I would just say, look, I finished my contract in March, the market's been a bit quiet. I've been, had family commitments or applying for jobs, and that just this is what it is. The market's been a bit challenging. That'd be my advice. Again, Hope that helps. Nicola, I've been asked to provide a contract for a 6-month position with a charity. Can you advise on any templates one can use? Nicola, happy to pick up after on that point for sure with regards to documentation and contracts. Murray has asked, any advice on getting cut through when the number of candidates going for a role seems to be even higher? Getting responses to messages is never easy. My only advice on that point, as I say, is well, to go back to what I mentioned earlier about just sending a 1 or 2 liner to the hiring manager or talent acquisition partner. Um, um, that would be quite key. But if you are going for the kind of LinkedIn applications and going through the kind of job boards, you're going to be up against a hell of a lot of people. So another piece of advice I was going to talk on is to try and gain as many recruitment contacts in the field, whether that be VMA Group or other corporate communications marketing recruitment companies out there, and try and get on the radar of those contract recruiters as well. Because when you are before, I mean, our job is to do the long listing, do the pre-screening, and whittle that 330 down to 5 or 6 people. Sometimes even fewer, but typically between 3 and 6 candidates will share with a client. So your chances of securing something dramatically increases, in my opinion. But we're there to save the client the hassle and the time. And we do that within sort of 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours. So to try and get in as many at the radar, as many recruitment contacts as possible, so that you're in smaller shortlists, and also send one-liners directly to the hiring managers as well. I think those things can help. Susan's asked, yeah, similar question there. What does it take to really stand out as a candidate? Yeah, you asked it like 5 seconds after Mari, so hopefully that answer goes with that question as well. Rebecca, hi Matt, I'm a comms professional that mostly faced externally in PR and comms in our career, though I have 3 years in internal communications experience with North American multinational through the pandemic. It's both external and internal facing. I never know how to present this well. Any tips if I'm applying for an internal comms role? That's a good question. Obviously, you're going to be up against people that pure internal communication specialists. So I guess you could look at using that to your advantage, that you've got broader communications experience that they maybe don't have. I would also highlight, I would tailor your CV for everything that you go for, of course, and maybe bring the internal communications achievements that you've had at the forefront of each of that 3 years you've got in the North American company. So really focus on that. Would be my 2 pieces of advice. So yeah, highlighting the rounded comms experience, working that as an advantage, and bringing out the internal comms as to the forefront. You could look at, of course, having an internal comms tailored CV rather than a broad corporate comms CV as well. A few more questions. Before I answer those, I had a bit of a spiel that I wanted to run through actually, with regards to market overview and roles that we've been managing. So conscious of time, so it's 1 o'clock. So totally get it if people have to shoot off, because I did just book in for half an hour, but I'm here for as long as needed, and I can answer those other questions at the end. But we still have quite a few people on the call. So my general market overview from my side, I don't want to be too negative, but just a bit realistic. So after the boom, it was a bit of a boom actually in 2021 and 2022. So post-COVID, the market really did sort of take off. Lots of rehiring, building comms teams, particularly in internal comms, after the leaders saw the demand. Finally, they saw the need for internal communications. However, on the back of that, we've seen, and this isn't just in comms, but in different business areas, and recruitment companies are seeing this across all different disciplines, is that there are now cuts, redundancies, as we've seen, headcount freezes, because there maybe was a bit of overhiring. So the back end of 2022 and early 2023, I feel like a bit of a history lesson now, but that's when the market turned. And it was a real mix of recruitment companies are seeing between a 20 and 40% reduction of jobs year on year from 2022 to 2023. So it wasn't insignificant. It's pretty meaty actually. So that was very similar to the COVID year. This is, in fact, some people calling it COVID 2.0. Partly based on the overhiring on the back of COVID, and now consolidating due to uncertain market conditions and the recession. Obviously, we've seen the financial uncertainty, the political uncertainty, higher interest rates, obviously elections coming up. The positive on the back of that is that both of those things, the next 6 to 12 months forecast, are that the financial markets may be sort of settling a little bit, interest rates are expected to decrease, and also the fact that Rishi's brought the election forward to July will mean we have a little bit more political certainty a little bit sooner than we're expecting. So yeah, it has been really, really tough. But the forecast is that over the next, hopefully, few months, but 6 months definitely, it's likely to pick up and then into early 2025. As I say, with regards to applications and adverts, the volume of people applying for each role is considerably higher than the average for obvious reasons. I've mentioned the numbers there on the adverts that I put up. You know, it can range from 150 to, let's say, 350 for junior roles. Within the contract team, we do support clients with project-based roles, whether that be technology, finance, HR, M&A, and change. So unfortunately, where lots of these change programs have been put on hold due to the uncertainty, we're now supporting clients. The main bulk of our roles are the urgent replacement hires. If someone in the team leaves and they're a key member, they maybe need someone in urgently, and they may hire a bit of a stopgap while they recruit perm, or they may recruit a kind of temp to perm sort of situation. That's happened quite a bit recently, kind of temp to perms, people that can start very quickly, get up to speed, and then look at that as a 6 month, maybe to perm kind of situation. And of course, Matt covers sabbatical leaves, covers and things like that. That's become the bulk rather than the kind of change roles that we'd normally expect. So as the market picks up, more change happening, hopefully more change programs being signed off, that's when you'd expect contract and the interim. Back to Nicola's question earlier, are you managing any interim roles? Not at the moment, but when things pick up, that's when we'd expect more interim roles to come through. An example of some of the roles that we've covered over the past 6 months, or some of the roles I've personally covered, channels. I've recruited a few channels roles. One was a Mac cover. That was a day rate role, actually, contrary to what I said earlier about Mac covers mainly being FTCs. But that Internal Comms channel manager for FTSE 100, £400 a day for 6 months. We recruited a senior channels manager for a gambling company, 82k. That was a temp to perm. Again, someone left, and that's a temp to perm option. Workday implementation, that was, again, contrary to what I just said, that was a big global manufacturing firm that was going for a big 2 to 3 year Workday implementation. So again, HR systems. And that was an interim role outside our 35, fully remote because it was a global team. That's paying £700 a day. I picked that one up a little bit late. I think they already had a few people in process there. And again, they, not bitter about this, but they secured someone through their network. So it's a recommendation of someone they used to work with before, but an example of something that I have worked on recently. Post-acquisition integration comms, as I said, M&A, although they're not maybe as common as they were pre kind of COVID, we're still working on some acquisition, post-acquisition integration comms roles. BAU Mac covers that I've mentioned, and establishing new functions. So I've recruited 2 in the past 6 months of communications professionals going into organizations that don't have internal comms set up, and they're going in to really audit what they've currently got in place, i.e. not much, and then advise on what they should have and what would could work for them in the long terms. They're both, again, contracts, both 6 months, one fixed term 80k and the other was 550 a day, and that was inside IR35, and they'll be tasked with building a team up as well. So I appreciate I have been fairly negative about the market, but positive signs about things to come. So I've got a section here, general advice standing out from the competition. So I mentioned here, focus on quality, not quantity. Follow up with key contacts roles you're applying for briefly, because if they have 200 people following up with emails and 2 or 3 paragraphs, they're probably not going to have time to read through them, unfortunately. Industry memberships and building your network. Hiring manager that I'm currently working with, actually, so when I shortlisted some candidates, one of the candidates that she really liked the look of was somebody that has 2 membership to 2 different organizations. I think it was CIPR and IOIC, and mentioned on the CV about some professional development that she'd done within the IOIC, and that just caught the hiring manager's eye because of the 6 people that I shared. She was the only one that had done that. So she secured an interview, obviously with her experience, but that was something that kind of secured it over some of the others that didn't get an interview. So that can be good. Oh, this is a good one. Don't say so myself. Key terms and buzzwords to catch attention of talent acquisitions that aren't as familiar with job briefs, or even AI systems that are filtering CVs. So this can help in a market when clients are being too fussy. And what I mean by that is if you're applying for example, M&A communications role, and you send an application off on Quick Apply on LinkedIn, and you don't have, I know it sounds silly, but you don't have the words in your CV, merger, M&A, or acquisition, and you've got a talent acquisition manager who's, an in-house TA who isn't familiar with change communications, corporate comms, what have you, or you've got even worse, an AI system who's filtering, and all they're looking for, they're quickly scanning M&A, merger, acquisition, then you're not going to get, it's unlikely you're going to get a call. Even though you may have worked in a program environment, working on program comms team back to back for the past 10 years on different global transformations, and you could definitely go and do that role. It's those key terms and buzzwords that will get picked up, or won't get picked up, as it were. So lots of recruiters, again, who maybe aren't special, even specialist recruiters will do this as well, is will do what's called kind of Boolean searches, and we'll just do key term searches, whether it's in LinkedIn or Read or whatever, or our own kind of systems, and we'll search for a certain terminology. If we're recruiting an SAP change lead, then we might search SAP, pretty basic stuff. But that is a way of finding people that have worked on SAP. You may have worked on a global technology transformation, S4 HANA ERP, but the word SAP isn't in your CV, and then that won't come up. So when you're applying for roles, or when you've got your CV out there, that's just something I would do, is add in quite key terms. Impact of IR35, that was one of my little sections here. We've spoken about that a little bit. Well, actually, I've spoken about it in the presentation and one of the questions. So the impact of IR35 has been significant in that it's impacted the way in which contractors work. Over 90% of internal change communications professionals now work on a PAYE basis, whether that's fixed term contract, PAYE and payroll via via a recruitment company or end client, or or via an umbrella company. Did I say that? Not as many are working through limited companies, mainly because clients aren't willing to do an IR35 assessment. Lots of the big corporates will just say, hands down, if you want to work here as a day rate contractor, you have to work on a PAYE basis, because we don't want HMRC doing any investigations. So that's quite a big impact. What we have seen is some of the rates have increased on the back of that, because contractors said, well, I'm used to earning £600 a day. I'm going to be paying a hell of a lot more tax. Why should I earn a lot less doing the same job? So you need to be paying me 720, and that's quite punchy, but believe it or not, some clients are happy to do that. So that's a conversation that we can advise if you need it, or you can have that conversation with regards to that negotiation. Building interim network was my final point, and I did mention about building contacts within, this sometimes be called ISPs, interim service providers, but essentially recruitment companies that hire contractors. So whether it's myself, Deborah Lee at VMA Group, or Ben Mitchell. Ben Mitchell covers the external communications PR media roles on a contract basis. Myself and Deborah Lee cover the internal change comms. But then you'd have our equivalents in competitor organizations, of course, as well. Okay, that's some bits there. I've got a few more questions. Actually, do I have any more questions? Someone's asked for some extra in IR35, which I can send through, Rebecca, no problem at all. I may be missing it. I'll run through and I'll reply to people directly, but I'm not seeing anything new there, so that's great. Oh, there's a few in the Q&A. Let me see. I think due to time and the fact that we've got, a good 30 odd people still on the call, I will reply individually to the people that I haven't answered so far. And I hope you'll found this session useful. More than happy to talk through CV, job search, or anything else at all today or later this week, early next. And I wish you all the best of luck if you're in the market looking for a new role. See you later.